R.I.P. to one of the best to ever do it that did not wear a world championship belt. And if you look at any list of pro wrestlers that were top guys who drew big money and didn't wear the top belt, he's probably at the top of that list.
He never had the top belt.
Never had.
What belts did he have? Do you know?
Intercontinental, WCW tag titles.
No, I mean I heard Cornette's tribute earlier, and he had nothing but really great things to say about him. You know, Cornette doesn't say nice things about anybody, but yeah, Cornette was saying he's the best worker out of that group, out of the group he came through with.
I shared on our Instagram and our TikTok. One of the first times I ever came across him as a fan before I was in the business was in the AWA. It was I think it was called like American Starship, and it was like Coyote and like Eagle. It was like, but he was in the 80s. He had that Magnum TA look because he had the big mustache. But Wrestle Rock Rumble, 1985, they did a rap very similar to the Super Bowl Shuffle with the Bears. And Scott Hall was there. He actually had the tag belts with Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. There was that era of AWA produced nothing but future stars that basically defined who your wrestling memories would be. Hulk Hogan.
But he wasn't doing the Razor gimmick at that time. What was he doing?
No, he was just Big Scott Hall. He bounced around with a lot of like gimmicks because everyone knew he was something special. I think they had like an alligator hunter gimmick for him for a while. The first iteration of what Razor Ramon was gonna be was, I believe, around 90 or 91, was in WCW. He was the Diamond Stud. And that was when they really repackaged him, where he had like the slick hair, but he was basically part of the Diamond Mine with DDP. And he teamed up, ironically, with Vinny Vegas later on. I mean, basically, think about this. Before WCW had Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, they already had their one of their top drawing teams ever back in the early 90s, and no one who knew who they were when they were Vinny Vegas and the Diamond Stud and the Diamond Mine. But he had the look. Instead of a toothpick, he had a match that he would do that. And it was a very short-lived gimmick, but that's when Vince finally rented Scarface. And
was he doing Scarface at that time?
No. He didn't do the Scarface gimmick until Razor Ramon, but he had the look. He started the look, which was the hair and the little piece of wood in your mouth.
I have this vision of like Vince walking in on Shane watching Scarface. What the hell are you watching? And then he gets the idea.
Oh, yeah. And that's why there was a lot of, Jason saying, that's where there was a lot of history with DDP. I mean, they had the big documentary, like after he saved Jake the Snake's life, he basically saved Scott Hall's life, from all his troubles, his physical problems, his addiction issues. I mean, Jake did love crack. That was a big thing. I remember watching Beyond the Mat and and Jake just left to go smoke crack.
Yeah.
Back then they do these vignettes that actually lead in for the guys coming into town. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, was so successful because they had all these vignettes showing how he used his money. Mr. Perfect was another one. And Razor Ramon was another one. I mean, Vince was on hand in Miami when they were shooting all these vignettes of, Razor Ramon doing all the Cuban stuff in little Havana, playing the cigars and playing dominoes, and it was done so well. And he got that gimmick over, and I think it was WrestleMania 10. He was already starting to get over, but WrestleMania 10 with that ladder match with Shawn Michaels basically put ladder matches on the map, right? They're calling it the first ever ladder match. They may have had some dark ladder matches before. Brett says him and Shawn did one, but it was Razor and Shawn that put that on the map. And yeah, I do. I have, someone texted me the other day and I was like, man, he was a really good guy. And then they're like, was he? I was like, and I couldn't tell if they meant because he's the bad guy, or it's just like, was he? Because you hear all the stories. And the only story I have to go on is, when I was Enhancement Talent there, and that's when Ahmed was coming in. And after I did my shot with Ahmed, I worked some enhancement matches with Kane when he was Dr. Isaac Yankem DDS, and I did one with Undertaker, and it was great. Undertaker was really professional. He lived up to the aura to be in his presence. It was unreal. But anyway, I was bumping my ass off because it was Undertaker. Of course, right? I mean, you're gonna bump he just looks in your direction, you're gonna take a bump. So I was just when he pulled me up for that choke slam, I jumped as hard as I could and as high as I could, not knowing that Undertaker's pretty powerful. I mean, I knew he was powerful, but you always just don't realize the power of somebody until you're freaking in the palm of their hands.
Until they have you by the throat.
Yeah, until he had me by the goozle. He basically brought me up and I got high, dude. And when I came down, I tried to somehow make gravity work harder for me, and I bumped as hard as I could, and I took that tombstone, 1, 2, 3. And the injustice on that match is that match never made it on the air because it was taped for WWF Superstars, and they did a Royal Rumble preemption. So the only piece of that match that is out there is my head getting tombstoned in a commercial for the Royal Rumble. That's really all I have, but that's not the part of the story. The part of the story that came back is, when you're enhancement talent, you're scared. You go back there and you're surrounded by, for me, legends, people that you grew up with, idolized, that are just walking around, and they're your peers, but you don't feel like your peers. I'm 20 years old and I'm sitting back there, and Ahmed's seeing how he can put his arm around my neck. Let me try this, and Piper comes by. Oh, I think you got him, boss. I think you got him, boss. I mean, just to have that. But anyway, after the match, I came back. Taker was great. He gave me the see you down the road. He was awesome. But Scott Hall came up to me, and he's like, "Hey, good job, kid. You did your job. You made him look like what he is. And those bumps were really good. And man, you got some height on that choke slam." And I was just like,
this was after the Undertaker match.
Yeah. And if you would have zoomed into my face at that time, it literally would have been like, he's talking to me, and I'm shy, not looking him in the eye, and just like, taking it in. And he's telling me this, and he's giving me these notes because he's a student of the business. He knows. I mean, ask Sean Waltman. I mean, he has no WW career if it wasn't for Razor Ramon putting him over on Raw. He's not going to be like, "Oh, don't pick this guy." You always hear the stories, but I'm just telling you for my firsthand account. And like, he didn't know me. I could have just been any other enhancement talent. I'm sure Taker did that to hundreds of guys. He didn't have to come up and compliment me like that. And I was like, I felt like, wow, I was vindicated that somebody saw, Taker saw, but somebody else watching who is very successful in this business saw that. And all I could do was the same thing you and I did when we ran into Darcy and Joe Bob and Darcy. Just like, thanks.
Chris Farley'd out, huh?
Yeah, Chris Farley. I didn't know what to say. I was like, "Oh, thanks." Thanks. Like an awkward chuckle and thanks. And then he just kind of looked at me, and then he was getting ready to walk away. And in my head, I'm like, damn it, I got to do something. This guy just complimented me. This is Razor Ramon. I got to do something. I can't just let him walk away. And I looked, and he was already kind of looking around like, okay, this conversation's going nowhere. I need to go talk to somebody else. And I just reached out, and I pinched his arm.
What? Was it St. Patrick's Day?
No, it wasn't St. Patrick's Day. I think in my mind, I was going to go give him the wrestler's handshake from the 90s where you just barely touch them. But his hand wasn't there, and I'm like, well, can't stop now. And the only thing that was there was his arm. And then I was just like, squeeze. And I did it when he wasn't, like when he literally looked away. And I was just like, squeeze. And then I didn't look at him afterwards. Like a little kid saying, I got your nose. And now it's like, I got your bicep.
Did he look at you after you squeezed him?
So after I do that, then he looked down at me, and I just gave my awkward, I don't know what to do here, so just a chuckle. And then he just did his, and he winked, and he walked away.
Classy.
Yeah. He knew it was just like, this kid is like, he knew I was just a bundle of nerves, and I didn't know how to take a compliment, but he knew I wasn't an asshole, that I was just like, how did I even get here? This is kind of a dream, was my dream. So he just did his cool guy chuckle, gave me a wink, and walked away after he just complimented me. So after that, how can you say you hear all the stories of like, oh, the clique were holding people back, and it's just like, he didn't know me from anyone, man. I told you the same thing with Owen. He didn't have to do this. They don't have to come. These guys don't have to even acknowledge you. I can't give you a Vince McMahon story other than, how you doing? Like when I walked by him. I was like, hey, I was like, hey, hi, how are you? And then Vince is like, how you doing? I'm not going to stop to talk to you, but how you doing?
He had plenty to say about your pants, though.
Oh, he did. Yeah, during the match, he did. Yeah, we got some of those clips. We got to pull those up.
So I think the thing about Scott Hall is I feel like his addiction issues sort of overshadow some of his accomplishments,
Yeah.
I think that's it's just what folks seem to remember. And when you're seeing now that he's gone, folks coming out and giving their memories of him, a lot of people had a lot of respect for him.
Yeah.
They really liked him.
Oh, no, absolutely, dude. He was a student of the business. He came up in the territory era, right? And basically, if it wasn't for him and Kevin Nash, does the Attitude Era even happen? Does the NWO even happen? And you heard Jim Cornette was talking about it on his show. It was just like they sued him for like, you're imitating Razor Ramon. That's our character. But Scott was just this guy that was just like so cool. He built in these mannerisms that were Scott Hall being Razor Ramon. I'm not acting. He wasn't playing a character. He was just that cool.
Right.
And it's like, how can you say that this is him? And there is no NWO WCW without Scott Hall going out there and cutting that promo.
Very first line of the NWO faction was him, right?
Yeah. You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. And like Cornette said, it's the first time in the 90s that anybody believed anything in pro wrestling. You would say, I would put that up there with any moment. And even, for Hulk Hogan to come, it's like, you know what? I'm going to be the third guy in this faction. Because he knew this was money. And a lot of that had to do with the creative of Scott. There was a lot of creative people that don't get credit for how much they helped create just by saying something in the locker room. And I guarantee you, Scott was one of those guys. He would be the guy that walk up and like, hey, I see the gimmick you're trying to do. You should try to do this. Or you should try to do that. Maybe you should wear this. Maybe you should say that. But think, if he didn't know me, he didn't even know my name, and he was giving me compliments bordering on notes, if I would have engaged with him, he would have gave me notes. If he did that to somebody he didn't know, a nobody, what would he do for somebody that he sees that can make money?
Yeah. Did he ever have, he sort of, when he sort of was having his issues with substances, he kind of fell off wrestling, but he never had any background in the booking or training or any of that stuff, right?
No, not like officially. Not officially. But again, he was one of those unofficial guys that like he has really good notes to give. And I'm going to say, you hear all the reputation. Kevin Nash was another one. He made a conversation with me. Sean Waltman, who I worked with in Global, he was another one. You saw him always engaging, like when Mick Foley was Mankind. He's like, oh man, bro, did you see Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2? What you should do, now that you shaved a piece of your hair, you should get a lighter and light that hanger and scrape the skin and act like you're eating the skin. He's out there like feeding. These guys were all just trying to make the business better. And it could be argued they did this because there was no union, so they made an unofficial union in the locker room. But
yeah.
It was just like part of their own. So he never had any official I'm training other than his son. Right, he was training his son a lot. So I don't know. I've never seen his son work. I think they've done some tag matches or he's came out as his manager, but
Has he?
he's had some dark times, and that's got to be hard to be Scott Hall's son as far as like coming up in the business of just like
Yeah.
you have. That's a hard act to follow. So he was a good guy. The
And
bad
he
guy.
really is beloved.
Yeah, I think so.
Shea Serrano, he's a writer on Twitter. He's a Latino writer from San Antonio.
Yep.
He said he had a really funny tweet where he said Scott Hall was so cool when Mexicans found out Razor Ramon was so cool when Mexicans found out it was just a white guy. They didn't care.
And that's accurate, man. Because, I mean, he just embodied it so well. And here's the thing. We're going to come back to what we always been saying on this show. It was real. It was genuine. When he was Razor Ramon, maybe the accent wasn't genuine, but the coolness was. And that shined through. So, R.I.P., man, to one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah,
One of the best to ever do it.
for sure. And I think as time sort of goes on, hopefully his legacy kind of shoots up. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously he had his issues, but hopefully that he's remembered because, like I said, folks have a lot of really good stuff to say about him.
Yeah. I mean, WWE, to their credit, whipped up a package very quickly on, the same day we got the bad news that they had a package. And I'd like to see them do something for him. But I don't know. He's already a 2-time Hall of Famer. So I'm not really sure what else could they do to like honor his memory.
Yeah.
What I'd like to see, and it probably can't happen in WWE, and maybe it can happen in AEW, but I do feel like Moxley and Bryan have that outsiders feel, and I wish there was a way that they can somehow pay homage to him. Yeah, just to let him know how much of an impact on the business he really did have.
We saw Britt had the Razor gear at the in the cage match.
Oh yes, she did. Yeah, and I don't know. Did you get a lot of people were saying it's too soon when Kevin Owens came out on Monday Night Raw and he said, "Hey yo." Did you feel like that was too soon or
No, I mean, why? No, he just died. Why? That seems like the appropriate time to me.
Yeah.
He didn't. It wasn't like he was, some kind of like weird circumstances around his death.
No, he wasn't doing it to get heat. It was his way of winking to the crowd to acknowledge, "Hey yo." Because man, he was just not only was he a big guy. I mean, he was a big dude, like 6'6", 6'7". He was up there.
And the thing he was really proportionate, like in his build. So he looked, he was way bigger than he looked.
Oh yeah.
He looked like an action figure, but he was, what is this, 6'5"?
Yeah, he's a big dude. And just thinking how that razor's edge, that finishing hold, like he would throw that on most guys he could work. He'd get those guys up, and he'd feel safe. But he was also magic on the mic, dude. I mean, this was back when it wasn't a standard that you start the show off with a 20-minute promo. When he went to the ring and he did his survey, one more for the good guys, I mean, people wanted to chant along with him. He had that same thing that Road Dogg had, where you just give him the mic, and it doesn't even have to be a 20-minute promo. It was just fun. It's not like, just like he was never reading a script. He was out there having fun, and people felt that fun, and they wanted to be a part of that fun. He was like just a party. He was great on the mic too. A lot of those NWO catchphrases, the for life, that all probably stemmed from him.
Yeah, and I mean, being like Scarface itself being such a big part of popular culture, he's sort of interwoven with that.
Yeah.
Becomes a little bit of a part of that,
Oh yeah, there's some really cool artwork. We should share. There's one there was one tribute to Razor Ramon, and it was Vice City in Grand Theft Auto, which I think was basically just their version of Miami. But they drew Razor Ramon with his original colorful shirt when he first came in there and had the belt, but they used the same animation that they did in Grand Theft Auto, and it was one of my favorites. And I was like, "Yeah, dude, this needs to be a shirt, and you need to sell." Yeah, look at that. How sweet is that? I mean, that's pretty cool. Is it a shirt?
I'm
It's a
not
poster,
sure.
right?
This is just an image I found here. It just says Razor Ramon if he was a GTA loading screen. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks pretty sweet.
There's a cleaner look at it. Must be someone did some art there and posted it.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah, it's super dope, man. So R.I.P., man, to Razor, one of the best. Scott Hall, best to Cody and all Scott's family, and the clique. Hunter, Sean, Kevin, Sean Waltman and Shawn Michaels obviously were, the clique. They were like brothers in travel, so I'm sure they were hurting and still are hurting from that void. So condolences to you guys, and thank you, Scott's family, for letting him share his gift with us.
Hey yo,